In the same way, I think, the church as mother should continually seek ways of establishing contact with our world and people, especially with our young people and with present-day way of life and beliefs. The manner of approach in doing this is very vital to evangelization. Paul, for instance, never used the term pagan to describe the people. Instead, he used a more positive term, very religious. He perceived the Athenians as religious people, even when he saw the streets littered with idols. Paul used the Greek term, as I mentioned earlier on, daimonesteros, in a very positive term, in a very positive way, extremely religious. Paul went further to use another very positive religious term, sebasmata, meaning the objects of worship, in verse 22, if you check that, referring to what he observed as he walked the streets of Athens. Paul emphasized also an altar to an unknown God as part of what struck his attention. The fact that there was an altar to an unknown God is indicative of the knowledge of God. Even the atheist who denies the existence of God first has to acknowledge God's existence. The use of the religious term, worship, further reinforces this knowledge of God. Although their knowledge of God was imperfect, the first thing Paul did was to establish the fact that some kind of knowledge of God existed. At least someone in Athens knew there was an unknown God. One bar puts it rightly when he said, Paul did not think there was total darkness there. He did not think there was great light either. He does not offer an evaluation of the Greek culture, but he does imply that within it, there are significant signs of knowledge of the ultimate, and the altar was one of such signs. Something again about the speech, God is universal, and people of every age and time relate with God and understand God in different ways. This same God is one. The Christian God is the same universal God I think the Muslims call Allah. The Jews call Yahweh from the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God. And in African traditional religion, this same God is called with different names, emphasizing in a way the universality of God. And thus, God is never localized or represented by any image. The Athenians, it seems, knew this same universal God and served him unknowingly through the idols littered on their streets. Paul, too, understood this fact and made it a point of departure for his speech. He tells the Athenians, this unknown God that you worship unknowingly is the same true God that I proclaim to you. Verse 23. Now we consider some scholarly opinions and some scholarly views on this speech. Like you all know, biblical scholarship, in biblical scholarship, there's nothing that is written in gold. You question everything. Exegesis gives you plurality of ideas and method. So, one Ron Vince considered this Pauline approach as problematic. Even though there is little doubt that it is a brilliant rhetorical plot, by identifying the true God with the Athenians' unknown God, Paul adroitly defends himself against any charge that he is proclaiming foreign divinities. Perhaps he was just trying to play a game to play on them. He didn't really mean what he was saying. On the other hand, another guy, Carl Olav Sandnes, restricts the understanding of the entire speech. He says it's just a rhetorical device in line with Socrates, and according to Olav, he said Paul in this speech is compared or is following a Socratic method when he is faced with a critical audience, and he called this word insinuatio, which is a subtle approach to speak with concealment. You are coming directly, but you don't say what you want to say. You hide it in a way, and what you are really saying is not made known. But you yourself, you are convinced. You make the insinuation. That, unlike Socrates, Paul's aim was to promote curiosity and to elicit questions. In other words, he was just following the model of Socrates. It didn't really mean the content the way we are going into it now. That is one man's view too. However, a very important step in this Pauline paradigm of evangelization, in my view, and in Gallagher's opinion, is the fact that Paul obeys the pastoral principle he tells us of himself in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 22 to 23, when he says, "To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some." Thus, he brings the gospel in dialogue with the culture, with the different trends and schools of thought prevailing in Athens. According to F.F. Bruce, Athens continued to represent the highest level of culture attained in classical antiquity. The sculpture, the literature, and oratory of Athens in the 5th and 4th century BC have indeed never been surpassed. In philosophy too, she occupied a leading place, being the native city of Socrates and Plato, and the adopted home of Aristotle, Epicurus, and Zeno. In a sense, Europe today has become very sophisticated with trends not compatible with the gospel. The young people are more vulnerable and have drifted far from religion, with so many preoccupying thought-provoking questions. The church must see hope in this situation. She cannot lose sight of her mission to make Jesus known and to revive faith in peoples and religions and shed common values that can sustain our pluralistic society. Could there be more up-to-date ways and approaches to be explored in presenting religious truths to the people of our time, especially our young people? That remains the question. Today, our world is pluralistic, multicultural, and multi-religious, making Paul's method of dialogue in Athens, making Paul's method of dialogue in evangelization more relevant. Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor captured this point in his lecture of May 8, 2008 at Westminster Cathedral, where he called for improved dialogue between believers and non-believers in Britain. This dialogue, he said, I quote him, needs to be based on mutual esteem, grounded in humility and respect for the other, rather than a rejection of difference. According to the Cardinal, in the spirit of dialogue, quoting this speech, Paul is not afraid to draw upon ideas from Stoic philosophy, which he weaves into his biblical, Jewish, and Christian themes. Non-Christian ideas have found their way into Christian scriptures. The Cardinal further quotes Pope Benedict XVI, who reminded us from his very beginning that Christian thought has drawn upon ideas in non-Christian philosophy and culture and seen them as seeds of the divine word that becomes enfleshed in Christ. In a recent publication, No Longer Strangers, Cultural Integration in Church and Society in Ireland, edited by Bernard Tracy, some Christian scholars, Alan Martin and Ryan and one Sir Yambasu, they reflected on the growing number of Protestant denominations and the challenges brought about by the influx of immigrant communities, calling for mutual enrichment and dialogue and openness to transcultural experiences as a way forward. For Christians, our faith in Jesus, his cross, suffering, death, and resurrection unite us. Other people are always welcome to our Christian faith. We too must love, appreciate other religions,